This is a translation from Spanish to English of the video, SWARUU and JOAN de ALGO, of the channel. Coding the Future driven by Rainier. We started. Hello friends, so welcome to your channel Coding the Future. Rainier speaks to you. Well, in today's video, as the title says, we'll talk a little about Joan of Arc. We'll see the relationship that exists between SWARUU from ERA and JOAN de ALGO. But first of all, I want to go a little in context. Let's talk a little about it, about SWARUU. How is SWARUU here with us? How did this adventure begin? How did you get here to this timeline? And then we will touch the subject. You will see the relationship little by little, as it is formed between SWARUU and Joan of Arc. So one of the things I want to say is a little bit of history about SWARUU. SWARUU at the age of 13 in ERA, she loses her mom. SWARUU is a unique daughter, and she was always interested in everything related to space travel and temporary travel. So when she is 13 years old, when she loses her mother, she decides it is time to go to civilization, to find a flight academy, to which she wants to enter to achieve this dream. Is always headed. So that's where, and what she decides to leave, something very interesting happens. I want to tell you that she told me that her house was in a forest and she called the civilization is where she was going to enter the flight academy. In this forest, as she explains it, the day she decides to leave, she sees that you are presented with an electric blue ship. And the ship lands in a clearing, in front of her, and by a voice a speaker communicates with her. And now I'm going to tell you exactly what this ship says and the dialogue that SWARUU has with her, if you'll allow me. Out of nowhere, she went down a ramp, a frontal ramp, and asked the ship to come up. She tells SWARUU that she would get up and go up to the ship. Her voice was gentle and soft, so she identified herself as artificial intelligence of the ship. SWARUU says, "Go up on board," and told me he was at my service because it was my ship at another time, or I had fallen into the hands of the negatives, and she was left alone and was scheduled to look for me in time at the age of 13, where I started my career as a pilot. It was my own ship, which came back for me, and here 4 years later, I'm here in it. SWARUU says, nothing in me is normal, even for Theta. Joining squadrons of hunting ships, you have an option to take part in a lead pilot, cold, sand clock, where you learn temporary manipulations at the end of the day. What they do not tell you is that with it you ruin your life. The more you fly, the more lines you jump in your ship, more you lose, and finally you disappear in time. You are not from one side, or recognize you from your own people. Because there is another version of you there, then you visit discreetly, but you do not stay, because you ruin your life to yourself, interfering with your own version of you. You have no home, only the ship, and you end up lost in time and space. Speak Rainier. Well, this little introduction that I just read, you will see the relationship that exists between another conversation that I have with SWARUU. And we see that she decided she always took that initiative or that interest to make trips in temporary lines. But that hunch or intuition that she had to enroll in a flight academy is not just that. SWARUU was being like another version of herself that is reborn. I ask SWARUU about this information that she passes me, and I tell her. With regard to your timeline where SWARUU was 13 years old, today is the future or the past for you. I mean here today where she finds herself representing. She came at age 13, this is the future or is it the past? SWARUU responds. This out of comparison, here is neither past nor future for me. Compared to the nexus point of mine at age 13, time is not linear. I see it, or I persist or calculate it as something older than an era. This moment here may be the same as the one that Susie arrived for, because it is not the same point of reference, temporary linear or temporal reference. To make things worse or more complicated, the year that Theta uses as a reference according to research is 1985. For every day in Theta, era or Temur, spent 2.4 days on Earth. Today. I imagine it referring to 2018. That has been accentuated, There are 4.5 days on Earth for every day in era or tremor. This complicates the calculations. Rainier speaks. So this is because she can not give us a time if it is future or is past. SWARUU speaks. I can go in this moment to see how Susie looks for me, but I would open to my perception, therefore to my control another timeline where Susie arrives for me while another Susie with me in which you write is watching from above. The simple fact that I observe another line, change it into another alternately slightly different, it does not make sense that this moment here is past or future for me, it is only. Rainier speaks. Continuous with respect to this explanation that gives continuous SWARUU, and I ask you the following. I ask you to explain to me the relationship that exists between the SWARUU we know and the reptilian invasion of the 1500s that explains that in another video she had mentioned to me, invasion reptile in Europe to be more precision. Then she explains to me. SWARUU speaks. 1431 to be exact. SWARUU Paprianida. It flies and changes lines with the ship makes a temporary jump, that is, I find the 0-pointer meditation, the empty space. She dies coming back. Rainier speaks. There was a SWARUU Paprianida the first time. She leaves a mission of temporary line, she ends her mission, she comes back, something happens, she dies in the return. SWARUU speaks. It is born again as SWARUU, which has been the same, but only name changed to differentiate. Rainier speaks. So this is SWARUU and the previous one was SWARUU Paprianida. That SWARUU that is being the same changes its name to differentiate. SWARUU speaks. He grows and studies again, enters the hourglass, gives Susie again, performs a mission between 1420 and 1431, dies during the mission, the ship is left alone, but is programmed to look for SWARUU, again wherever he is find her. SWARUU was born again. He grows and decides to study as a fighter pilot, to enter an hourglass, he leaves his house to go to the academy, on the road a few meters from his house, Susie intercepts she. Susie tells her, to details everything, and reactivates his memory of SWARUU 13, remembering previous lives as SWARUU. Then I turn in the same life repeating it again and again until I do things correctly. SWARUU being too young, is not recognized by either TIENES or the Federation, but as a ship inherited by itself. Which died as one at the Arco in 1431. SWARUU jumps again, goes back to 1431, and achieves the same, but knows when it will be captured, escapes with the ship, and enters this timeline on July 4, 2017 Disty to not jump anymore. It comes into conflict with the Federation over her jurisdiction over the ship itself, wins all the arguments, and proclaims itself independent on March 20, 2018. SWARUU adopts the name of SWARUU Ronin and is now here. I try to put linear things, but from my perspective, my line or linear perception of events, if you aperture to see linear from another perspective that is not mine, you will not understand, because she says to one of the articles, for example. But they are in different lines. Rainier speaks. Well, as we can see here, SWARUU did not complete that time she was still born again, die and born. SWARUU, as you can see, is one of the Arco who goes to the past to complete that mission that she self-imposed. Let's continue with the explanation about Joan of Arc. SWARUU speaks. Joan of Arc was me. Not once but twice. One they burned me. In the next I escape. I am still her with this body, but the second time, the time when I remembered when they would come for me, I escaped, corrected the problem of my previous life. In your history books they burned me because that's how it was, but I come from where it escaped, and nobody knows or nobody knew it was her. The Vatican says they burned it because they do it with everyone, anyway, because that's what works for them. Even if I escape, if it's complicated for me, but I'm learning to. Both versions are correct. Surely you've seen the movie, Back to the Future. They represent a linear time that does not reflect reality. At the same time having something, Return to the Future 2, if it represents something true, with the concept of observing itself from another perspective. We analyze the movie here for multiple reasons, most they represent a linear, rigid and erroneous Tommy's reductionist. Rainier speaks. I continue and ask the next question to SWARUU, when you came back for the second time to be Joan of Arc. Did you arrive just before to escape or were you born again like one of the article? Look closely at the answer she gives me here. SWARUU speaks. Joan of Arc was never born. It is part of the official story that is very controlled by the Vatican. Juana d'Arco was a name that I invented, Juana, and Arco was given to me by some local farmers. Because I taught them how to make bows for arrows. Rainier speaks. Then I took note and said here. Well, this for me clarifies a confusion that I had, because I was wondering, but how is it possible that she has returned from the past to be Joan of Arc again? When I imagined that another Joan of Arc was born, then I imagined a conflict between two people. One that was born and another that arrived, but it was not this way. Well, we continue here with other things that SWARUU tells me. This concludes the explanation of Joan of Arc. How is it that SWARUU went to the past to correct a mistake, and how it was burned, but not convinced that end of the story, and to go back to correct it after knowing when the leave to capture achievement escape? And we're still here. SWARUU tells me the following. SWARUU speaks. I found out that they made her recent for her miracles to Joan of Arc. I do not know what they are talking about because I do not know the whole official story. Rainier speaks. The official story that we have, she says that she did not take an interest in the official story we have because she is disgusted by such a lie. SWARUU speaks. The only miracles that I did were made with the first aid kit of this ship, were only medicines and medical technology. Rainier speaks. She does not know why they canonized her, she says, but because they canonized me, if the only miracles I performed were simply with the first aid kit that she had in her ship, she wonders then. It must be because of that. Or will it be because of military strategy? And to which she responds. SWARUU speaks. Just because I could see what would happen in each step ahead. Rainier speaks. Then notice this is a thing of why she thinks that she does not agree with the Vatican story, because she does not feel like she isn't. She simply used technology that was existent for her to be able to see the events and be able to carry out her battles at that moment. She plans her attack strategies herself. That is not why we can say that she is holy, she says, not for that reason I am holy. Well, here to conclude, she has a last paragraph in which she tells me. SWARUU speaks. I still remember that family, the children, their animals, their houses, the farm, the smells of smoke inside the house, the pans full of Olin, their smoked food, the cheeses made at home, the laughter of the children, people forgotten by history. They have died for centuries. It hurts to know this. Rainier speaks. Well, remember that for her, not for centuries, because she just made a jump and is the same that is here with us, as you can see. So good to recap all this. The SWARUU that we have here in orbit. 4 years passed since she left at the age of 13, which was searched by Susie and who recognized her, and Susie was scheduled to find SWARUU once she was born again at the age of 13, which is where she was born. His interest in space flights or temporary trips arose. SWARUU enters the ship refreshes her memory, and she introduces herself as her ship to herself and tells SWARUU everything she has experienced, makes her like a shock in her memory. She enters all this, recognizes herself, and she says she wants to continue with her missions, the mission where she returns and changes that last event where Joan of Arc was captured and burned. She, knowing that she manages to change these events, she does them and she goes away. She arrives here in 2017. She enters into conflict with the Federation, by jurisdictions of her being so young, having a hunting ship of that style. She wins all the arguments, decide to become independent, change your name and stay here at this moment. Here I say this orbit of our land, it has no house, it does not call anything home, as we saw it cannot return to Era, because there is already another SWARUU there. And well, here we have friends with us. The fact that she said that she has nowhere else to call home, means that we will probably have it for a good time, I hope so. That always there, that always. But if we come to take that leap to the 5th density, I asked this question in a previous video. If we move to the 5th density, SWARUU, could you call Earth home? Remember? And she said yes. But not like this now, because I could not survive long here. Very interesting all this. Good. Friends, I hope you like them. Do not hesitate to ask your questions. JOAN.